If you're taking the LSAT this fall, you're in a better position than anyone over the past 30 years because you don't have to study logic games. You can narrow your focus on logical reasoning and reading comprehension, and any gains you make in your understanding of logical reasoning will be doubled across the two sections. Today, I'll share with you what I would personally do if I wanted to score a 175 on the LSAT this fall. For those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005, and I personally increased my LSAT score from a 152 to a 175. Of course, back when I took the LSAT, logic games was on the test, and it was my worst section to begin with. It would have been a lot easier for me to conquer the LSAT if logic games hadn't been on the exam. And so I'm going to walk you through how I would have studied if I was taking the LSAT today and didn't have to spend any time on logic games. Logical reasoning is now 2/3 of the test because LSAT removed the logic games section and replaced it with a second scored logical reasoning section. And so first off, I would double down and go hard on logical reasoning because any gains you make in your understanding of reasoning are going to be doubled across the two sections out of 3. Now, there are 15 different types of logical reasoning questions, but not all of them show up equally often. Some are more common than others. The 3 most common types of logical reasoning questions are necessary assumption, inference, and flaw. And so I would focus on those to start with before dealing with the rare types that hardly ever come up, like evaluate the argument or cannot be true or must be false. And as annoying as parallel reasoning questions are, there are only a couple of them per section. And so you're going to get a lot more benefit focusing on a type like must be true or flaw or necessary assumption, where you might have as many as 4 or 5 of those in a single logical reasoning section out of 25, 26 questions, than a parallel that might only show up once or twice in a given section. Because if there's 2 sections of it, then that ratio is doubled and the differential in absolute terms becomes even more significant, meaning you could focus on a type where there's 10 of them on the exam versus a type where there's only 2 of them or 3 of them on the exam, and all questions on the LSAT are weighted equally, meaning every single question is worth 1 raw score point. You don't get more points for getting tougher questions right, and you don't get more points for getting more complex questions right either, even if the number of words you have to read for, say, solving a parallel reasoning question is double the number of words you might have to read for solving a flaw question or a necessary assumption question. Now, I divide LSAT prep into 3 major phases: accuracy, pacing, and endurance. I find there are 2 types of students. Some focus all their time on the accuracy phase, drilling questions by type as a way to procrastinate doing full-length timed practice tests. Then there are other students who do nothing but take timed practice tests because they love the instant feedback of seeing what their scores end up being. They're measuring their results in charts and graphs. But in reality, of course, this is not going to do anything for you because you're not being evaluated based on your practice test scores. You're being evaluated based on your test day score. And if you don't learn from your mistakes, of course, you are doomed to make the same mistakes again. And so what I do with my students is I create for them personalized day-by-day study plans, mapping out exactly what to do from now until test day so that we don't leave it to chance. We don't leave it to how you're feeling that day. You have structure, you have accountability, you have a plan of attack. And so drilling questions by type does have its place because you have to understand the proper perspective from which to view each of those 15 or so types of logical reasoning questions. But then we need to move on to pacing, doing individual sections to work on your timing, how you allocate your time over the course of the section, and then you're pulling it all together with full-length timed practice tests. So while drilling's important, we don't spend all our time there, and we do spend some time there, however, before going on to doing full-length timed practice tests. Now, ideally, you want to do at least 10 full-length timed practice tests so that test day itself will feel like just another run-through. Now, let's suppose you've got roughly 2.5 months until test day. Let's say you've got about 9 weeks. You could divide those 9 weeks into 3 equal parts: 3 weeks for accuracy, 3 weeks for pacing, 3 weeks for endurance, meaning you're spending roughly 3 weeks on drilling questions by type, then spending 3 weeks doing individual timed sections to work on your pacing, and you're spending your final 3 weeks doing full-length timed practice tests, maybe 1 per week if you have other obligations like you're working or you're in school, maybe 2 timed exams per week if you have the leisure to do nothing but study for the LSAT. Of course, I would not recommend allowing only 9 weeks for your LSAT prep in total, and I would not recommend either spending only 3 weeks doing full-length timed practice tests. You want to, of course, integrate some of those throughout the majority of your prep after you've built a strong foundation. But I'm only, of course, giving you a general plan here. The best plans are personalized for you, your schedule, your weak areas. And so if you're interested in finding out more about joining our programs, you can check out the links below to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. And in the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.